Capricorn, let me tell you something the world often forgets. Not all battles are fought with swords, and not all victories are won in the open. There's a kind of power that moves without sound. A presence that doesn't need to shout to be felt. And you, Capricorn, have been carrying that power your whole life, even when others didn't see it. They thought your silence meant surrender. They mistook your patience for fear. They believed that because you didn't fight back, you had no fight in you at all. But what they didn't know is that your silence was never weakness. It was strategy. It was the calm before the storm. It was the mark of someone whose battles are fought on a higher plane. Not in gossip, not in chaos, but in the unseen realms where true power lives. You see, Capricorn, the universe doesn't crown warriors in the middle of the crowd. It crowns them in solitude, in the quiet hours when no one is watching. When you're holding yourself together in the dark. When you're choosing peace over revenge. When you're walking away knowing you could destroy, but instead you choose to build. But here's the thing. They didn't know your spiritual rank until they crossed the line. And the moment they did, they didn't just provoke you. They provoked something much greater, something that has been protecting you all along. In the next moments, I'm going to walk you through why this had to happen. Why the betrayal was not a curse but a confirmation. And why, by the time we're done here, you'll understand exactly why the people who underestimated you are now learning the truth the hard way. Part 1. Silence they mistook for weakness, but it was strategic power. Capricorn, there's something about your silence that has always made certain people uneasy. They expect noise when they push someone. They expect a fight when they provoke. They expect an instant reaction so they can feel like they're winning. But you've never given them that satisfaction. Think back to a moment, maybe at work, maybe in your personal life, when someone came at you with all the wrong intentions. They poked, they prodded, they whispered behind your back. And instead of clapping back or defending yourself, you chose stillness. You chose to let the truth speak for you. Do you remember how they laughed? How they mistook that quiet for weakness? What they didn't realize is that silence is not the absence of power. It's the containment of it. Like water behind a dam, quiet doesn't mean empty, it means controlled, focused, and waiting for the right moment to be released. Capricorn, your spiritual rank is built in these moments. Because while others burn their energy proving themselves in a flash of emotion, you invest yours in the long game. You know the loudest voice in the room is rarely the most powerful. And that true strength often works behind the scenes, invisible until the results are undeniable. Let me tell you a true story. A Capricorn I know was betrayed by a business partner. Instead of lashing out, she went silent. No posts on social media, no angry emails, no public drama. 3 months later, that partner's entire network collapsed. Because the very people they deceived started seeing the truth for themselves. She never had to raise her voice. The truth worked like a slow, steady tide until everything false was washed away. That's how your energy works, Capricorn. When you choose peace instead of pettiness, you trigger a higher form of justice, one that doesn't just expose lies, but leaves you stronger without ever stepping into the mud. Life lesson. Silence is not retreat, it's strategy. When you stop reacting to every insult, every provocation, you free yourself from playing small. You're not ignoring the battle, you're choosing the battlefield. And that's how you win without spending your soul on people who were never worth the fight. Part 2. When you don't react, heaven responds. Capricorn, here's something most people will never understand. When you choose not to respond to an attack, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means something far greater is already moving on your behalf. You see, the human reaction is to fight back immediately, to defend, to prove. But spiritual rank, the kind you carry, operates on a higher law. When you hold your peace, heaven takes notice. The moment you decide, I'm not lowering myself to that level, you send a signal to the unseen realms. And that's when the shift begins. I've seen it time and time again. A Capricorn endures months, sometimes years, of quiet sabotage. Whispers. Undermining. Opportunities coincidentally slipping away. And then, almost without warning, the tide turns. Doors begin to open where they were once shut. People who believed the lies start reaching out, apologizing, wanting to work with you again. Those who plotted against you start losing their grip, their influence fading into the background. Why? Because you didn't meet their darkness with more darkness. You didn't try to win in their arena. You trusted the timing of something bigger than yourself. Capricorn, this is why your victories feel different. They're not loud explosions. They're not messy public battles. They're quiet, clean shifts that rearrange the entire playing field without you having to move a single piece. Think about the times you stayed silent and were later grateful you did. Maybe it was a relationship where the truth revealed itself months later. Maybe it was a toxic workplace where the very person trying to push you out ended up leaving instead. In those moments, it wasn't luck, it was alignment. It was your higher self saying, "I've got this, just watch." And the beauty of this, Capricorn, is that the people who doubted you don't just see the results. They feel them. The energy shifts in a way they can't explain, and suddenly they realize the fight they thought they were winning was never in their favor to begin with. Life lesson. You don't have to match someone's chaos to prove your strength. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back, stay grounded, and let divine timing take the lead. Because when you remove yourself from the noise, heaven has room to speak. And when heaven speaks, there's nothing left to argue. Part 3. When they cross the line and trigger the spiritual alarm. Capricorn, there's a difference between someone testing your patience and someone crossing the line. Testing your patience is small, annoying words, petty actions, subtle shade. Crossing the line is different. It's when they step into territory they were never meant to touch. The moment they cross that threshold, something shifts in the spiritual realm. It's not a sound you can hear, but it's as real as thunder. A spiritual alarm goes off. And it doesn't call for you to fight. It calls for higher forces to step in. You see, some people don't believe in the unseen until they feel it. They think they can manipulate, lie, provoke, and still move forward untouched. But when they came against you, they didn't just mess with a person. They challenged the covering over your life. Imagine walking into a sacred temple and smashing something priceless, thinking no one's watching. In their mind, it's just them and the object. But in reality, the entire temple is guarded, and every movement is being recorded. That's what happens when someone crosses you. They think they've gotten away with it, until the consequences start chasing them down. Capricorn, the spiritual alarm is subtle at first. Connections they relied on begin to dry up. People they controlled start questioning them. Their energy becomes heavy, restless, and full of confusion. Doors that once opened easily for them start slamming shut. And they can't quite figure out why. But you know, it's not because you cursed them. It's not because you fought back. It's because they triggered protection that was always there. Protection they didn't even know existed. I've seen this happen in ways that left me in awe. A Capricorn woman I once knew was constantly targeted by a jealous coworker. This coworker smiled in her face, but behind the scenes tried to take credit for her work, twist her words, even block her promotions. One day, this woman found herself unexpectedly reassigned to a different department, no warning, no explanation. She thought it was a setback. But 6 weeks later, the entire team that coworker led was dissolved after an internal investigation exposed layers of dishonesty. She had been moved out just in time. Capricorn, that's how spiritual protection works. Sometimes it looks like loss. Sometimes it feels like rejection. But it's always redirection. Life lesson. When someone crosses the line, you don't have to rush to punish them. Life has a way of handling what you can't see. Your job is to stay in alignment, keep your hands clean, and trust that any door closed in your face was only meant to protect the next one that's about to open. Part 4. Why betrayal has to happen for the truth to be revealed. Capricorn, let's face a painful truth. If certain people hadn't betrayed you, you would have kept trusting them. And if you kept trusting them, they would have followed you into your next season, only to sabotage everything you were building. Sometimes, the betrayal isn't the problem. It's the protection. And that's the wisdom most people miss. You see, not everyone reveals their darkness when you're winning. They reveal it when they think you're weak. When they believe you've got no more power. When they assume they're smarter, faster, more connected. And in those moments, they let their mask slip. Not realizing the universe just gave you the clarity you didn't even know you needed. Capricorn, think about it. Would you have questioned their loyalty if everything stayed calm? Would you have seen their envy if they didn't get the chance to act on it? Would you have believed they were false if they hadn't crossed the line? Betrayal exposes what silence hides. Let me share something personal. I once mentored a young Capricorn man, sharp, grounded, intuitive. But he had a close friend who always lingered in his shadow. This friend cheered when things were going well, but fell silent whenever he won big. The day that Capricorn got a major promotion, his friend never called. Days later, he found out this same friend was telling others that he didn't deserve it, that he got lucky, that he'd probably fail. It was betrayal, yes, but it was also revelation. Because after that moment, he no longer doubted what his spirit had whispered for months. This person isn't for you. Capricorn, betrayal always hurts. But it also always reveals. And more importantly, it clears. It clears space in your life. It clears illusions from your mind. It clears energy from your path. Because you can't take a snake into your promised land and expect safety. You can't take poison into your destiny and expect it to bloom. Life lesson. Don't regret the betrayal. Regret staying blind longer than you had to. Because once someone shows you who they are, you have a gift. And that gift is truth. Use it. Build with it. And thank the universe for the painful clarity. Part 5. Clarity as a spiritual cleansing. Capricorn, you've been walking through life thinking you were being broken. But what if you weren't being broken at all? What if you were being cleaned? Because clarity, true, raw, undeniable clarity, is not soft. It doesn't always arrive like a sunrise. Sometimes it crashes in like a storm, ripping the covers off what you thought was safe, what you thought was love, what you thought was yours. But clarity doesn't destroy. It disinfects. It purifies. It makes space for alignment. Capricorn, every time the truth revealed itself, even when it hurt, you were being spiritually cleansed. That's why the betrayal had to sting. So it could sink deep enough to reach the part of you that still made excuses. That still hoped they would change. That still believed the mask over the mirror. You see, your spirit was too valuable to keep dancing with confusion. The universe didn't want you attached to anything not meant for your next level. So it allowed the truth to hit hard. Not to punish you, but to purify your path. I've seen this over and over again with Capricorn souls. You hold on longer than most. You give people the benefit of the doubt. You stay loyal beyond reason. And sometimes, clarity has to come like fire because whispers didn't work. There was a woman, Capricorn, of course, who believed a friend was loyal for years. But one day, in the most unexpected moment, she overheard her name in a conversation not meant for her ears. And what she heard shattered something inside. Not because the words were cruel, but because they revealed a truth she'd always felt but never wanted to face. That friend wasn't cheering for her. She was competing in silence, waiting for her to fall. That moment of clarity ended the friendship. But it also ended years of emotional exhaustion. It ended the energy drain. And for the first time in years, she could breathe. Not because everything made sense, but because the confusion was finally gone. Capricorn, your peace doesn't come from things always going right. It comes from knowing what's real, even if it hurts, even if it changes everything. Life lesson. Clarity isn't cruel. It's sacred. When you lose what wasn't meant for you, you make room for what was. Let the truth sting. Then let it set you free. Part 6. Winning without retaliation. Capricorn, they expected you to break. They expected you to lash out, to explode, to get messy. Because that's how they operate. That's how they win. In chaos, in confusion, in loud distractions. But you didn't give them the satisfaction. You didn't argue. You didn't expose them. You didn't stoop. And that silence, That choice not to retaliate, that was your elevation. You see, retaliation is for the impatient. It's for the ones who want temporary justice instead of lasting peace. But you, Capricorn, were never built for small victories. You were built for quiet empires. You don't need to destroy anyone to win. You just need to outgrow them. And that's exactly what you've been doing. Let me tell you a real story. A Capricorn man I once coached was publicly humiliated by someone he deeply trusted. This person aired personal things online, tried to ruin his reputation, even twisted the truth to gain sympathy. Everyone told him, "You need to fight back. Post your side. Expose them." But he didn't. He chose silence. He kept working, stayed grounded, and let time do the talking. 6 months later, that same person who mocked him online lost credibility. Why? Because people started seeing the patterns. Because truth doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs patience. And this Capricorn, he didn't just bounce back. He rose higher than ever. He got new clients, new respect, and more peace than he'd known in years. Capricorn, people think they win when they get a reaction out of you. But the real power is when they throw dirt, and you use it to plant something greater. They don't know what to do when you don't flinch. They panic when their game doesn't work. Because your silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And now, as things in your life start aligning, as opportunities flow your way, as your peace expands beyond the noise they tried to trap you in, they're left confused. They thought they'd see you fall, but instead, they're watching you rise. And that, Capricorn, is the sweetest kind of justice. Life lesson. You don't need to clap back to claim victory. Your results speak louder than any revenge. Let your healing be your revenge. Let your peace be your protest. Let your success be the sound they can't silence. Part 7. The public rise after the private battle. Capricorn, they saw you withdraw and assumed it meant defeat. They watched you go silent and mistook it for surrender. They didn't know what you were doing in that quiet space. But heaven did. Because while they were talking, while they were mocking, while they were building circles of noise around your name, you were building something far more powerful. Alignment, healing, elevation. You weren't losing. You were being repositioned. You see, your rise was never supposed to be announced. It was supposed to arrive. And now, it has. Capricorn, the same people who questioned your silence are now witnessing your results. They're seeing your glow return. They're watching your energy shift. Doors are opening that no one can explain. Opportunities are flowing toward you unforced, undeniable, divinely timed. And they don't understand it. Because in their world, success has to be chased. Fame has to be shouted. Power has to be performed. But in your world, in the world of the spiritually ranked, power comes after obedience. And blessings come without announcement. Your public rise, Capricorn, is not an accident. It is the harvest of private obedience. It's the reward for battles no one saw. It's the result of choosing peace over pettiness, truth over reaction, destiny over drama. Let me tell you about another Capricorn story. She was in a job where her ideas were constantly dismissed. She was overlooked for promotions, talked down to in meetings, and never given credit. Quietly, without complaining, she kept building. She enrolled in night courses, learned new skills, saved her money. One day, without warning, she was offered a position at a rival company with triple the salary and full leadership authority. And when she left, everything they had ignored about her suddenly became the thing they missed most. Capricorn, your value doesn't disappear because people don't see it. Sometimes it stays hidden until the right stage is prepared. And now your stage is ready. You're not just being elevated. You're being revealed. Not to prove yourself, but to fulfill your assignment. Life lesson. You don't need to explain your silence. You don't need to apologize for the glow-up they didn't see coming. Your rise isn't revenge. It's revelation. And every person who doubted you will have no choice but to witness the truth they refused to see. Part 8. True power doesn't need to be loud. Capricorn, somewhere along the way, the world convinced us that power had to be loud. That to be respected, you had to dominate. That to win, you had to shout. But that was never your way, was it? Your strength has always been quieter. The kind that walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere without saying a word. The kind that doesn't demand attention, but commands it with presence. You never needed to convince anyone of your worth. Because those who truly see, already feel it. Capricorn, your spiritual rank was never about volume. It was about alignment. It was about obedience when no one else was watching. It was about choosing character over clout, depth over drama, discipline over noise. They thought they could test your spirit with petty tactics. They thought your silence meant surrender. They didn't understand. That silence was a sanctuary, a battlefield, a sacred space where your soul realigned with the divine. And now that your rise is undeniable, they're left with questions you never have to answer. Because you didn't fight to be seen. You were chosen to be revealed. Capricorn, people forget. Earthquakes don't scream. They shift silently beneath the surface. Until everything above must acknowledge their presence. And that's you. Your journey didn't need noise. Your healing didn't need headlines. Your elevation didn't need a crowd. You just needed to stay aligned. And now, the alignment is doing the talking. Life lesson. The most powerful beings don't roar. They resonate. They shake foundations with presence, not performance. So when others doubt your silence, let them. You're not here to impress. You're here to impact. Conclusion, final message and call to subscribe. Capricorn, if you've made it this far, then this message wasn't just information. It was confirmation. It was spirit recognizing spirit. It was truth rising to the surface, finally being spoken aloud for someone who has been carrying it in silence for far too long. You were never meant to prove your worth through noise. You were never created to convince people who chose not to see you. Your journey has been sacred. Painful, yes. Lonely at times, absolutely. But sacred all the same. Because every tear you cried watered the roots of your future. Every betrayal cleared space for real alignment. And every time you chose peace over pettiness, you chose elevation over ego. You didn't lose. You evolved. You didn't retreat. You reset. You weren't rejected. You were rerouted. And now you rise. Not to spite them. Not to flaunt. But because you were always meant to. Let them wonder how you did it. Let them watch your blessings unfold in silence. Let them remember the day they crossed the line. And the moment they realized it was never just you they were dealing with. It was the divine presence walking with you all along. So here's your final truth. You were never average. You were never just another person. You were anointed. You were protected. You were spiritually ranked before anyone ever underestimated you. Let this be the moment you stop explaining. Let this be the season you start embodying. If this message spoke to your soul today, hit subscribe. Because more truth is coming. More wisdom. More healing. More Capricorn clarity. This is Zodiac Secrets Revealed. Where what's hidden finally gets the honor it deserves. Stay grounded. Stay unshakable. And remember, you never had to be loud to be powerful. You only had to be real.